to your issues and your points, Assemblymember Strickland, our local law, safety, and justice committee began meeting to discuss what it would take to integrate the two systems, and we began meeting 6 months ago and have system countywide support to move forward, and we are working towards a proposal so we can identify the costs in time for the county budget cycle of what those anticipated costs will be. So we hope that in the next several months, assuming that we get some more work and development on the V4 project, that we'll know that. And our DA, Mr. Totten, is here today, and who chairs our Law, Safety, and Justice Committee, to express his ideas about it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And just, you don't have to use the whole 2 minutes. Tressa Kentner, Pamela Miller, Sharon Waters, Terrence Brunifers, and Michael Vicencia.
Good afternoon. I'm Tressa Kentner. I've been the executive officer in the San Bernardino Superior Court for the last 15 years. And either I or my staff has been an integral part of developing all of the infrastructure systems that have had to take over as we've moved off of county systems. The changes to state funding and oversight have necessitated that we find different ways to provide for human resources, facilities management, and finance. For each court system to have recreated these systems would have been extremely ineffective, even for a large court system such as ours. There would be little uniformity in reporting of financial, personnel, or other data. The infrastructure supports developed and maintained by the AOC allow the local courts to focus on serving your constituents as well as ours. Statewide infrastructure systems designed to support the trial courts do so in a way that county systems never could. The trial court personnel have helped develop these systems and help to maintain them as we go forward. One area of significant accomplishment in the maintenance and repair is the maintenance and repair of courthouses. In the current fiscal year alone, $35 million will be spent on over 190 1,900 projects that have been prioritized statewide. These projects were managed by the Office of Court Construction and assisted by a working group of trial court judges and administrators on which I serve. The consistent prioritization of these projects has meant that the most important projects are funded based on need rather than who has the loudest voice with their local county board of supervisors. This is just one example of the importance of statewide infrastructure supported by the AOC.
Thank you. Pamela Miller.
Yes. My name is Pamela Miller, and I'm the Collaborative Justice Coordinator for Riverside Superior Court. And I wanted to talk on the human side as well. Riverside was one of few counties to implement a dependency drug court before state funding was available. In 2002, we received a federal grant for our dependency program to provide intensive services to multi-problem families after their children were removed from their home. We were able to reunify families on an average of 6 months sooner than those that did not participate, and the best news is that only 2% were coming back into the system. We thought at that point that it was imperative to provide these intensive services prior to pulling these families apart, pre-filing. When children were removed from the home, the parents lose their AFDC, they lose their Medi-Cal, they lose their housing, and then we ask them to get sober. In addition, Riverside Superior Court, the number of filed cases were increasing by 15% every year from 2000 to 2006. With AOC support, our efforts to secure additional funding and expand our program. In 2005, we obtained another federal grant for families at risk of losing their children. After we implemented this new program, caseloads in Riverside decreased by 43%, allowing Riverside to move judicial resources to the criminal calendar and reduce the costs of courtroom and other legal counsel for dependency. All of our parents are working and have housing. Their families are on the right path now and stopping the cycle of substance abuse and child neglect. The AOC has been working very hard for the last few years to identify the best practices of these programs, and I am working with them to help them to develop a database to track what is working and to expand these effective programs statewide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost my place. Sharon. Yes.
You want me in order, huh? Okay. Sharon Waters, Riverside Superior Court, former presiding judge of that court, current member of the Judicial Council. My comments relate to the issue of the increases of staffing levels at the Administrative Office of the courts. One of the programs you've heard brief mention of is the Assigned Judge program, which makes retired judges available to all the courts. And in courts such as Riverside, where we have 50% of the judges we actually should have in order to handle our current workload, it's of necessity that we have those judges. In 2007, we had one civil courtroom. All our other courtrooms were dedicated to trying criminal cases, and even with that, we were facing the prospect of dismissing criminal cases on a daily basis. Through the leadership of the Chief Justice and the Judicial Council, the AOC provided a core group called the Judicial Strike Team, made up of 28 judges, active and retired judges from other counties who came into Riverside, and in less than a year cleaned up our backlog, resolving over 400 criminal matters, allowing the court the necessary breathing room to help implement new case models. As a result of that effort, we now have all of 8 courtrooms doing civil trials in Riverside. We should have 20, but we're doing it without compromising the public safety by dismissing criminal cases. I'm hopeful that when we get more judges, that we will be able to improve upon the efforts started by the good work of the leadership provided by the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Bruin first. Did I butcher it?
It's Terry Bernares.
Oh.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm an associate justice on the Court of Appeal. Until recently, I was a trial judge for 10 years in the Contra Costa Superior Court. I had the opportunity to serve as the presiding judge of that court. On the technology issues, I also have the perspective of having served since 1999 on the Court Technology Advisory Committee. So I've been there both pre-CCMS and during the development phase of that technology. As you've heard earlier, we made some pretty big changes in 1998 and 1999, and the challenges we faced since that time have been to develop an infrastructure that lets us operate as a coherent judicial branch. That's been a challenge on several fronts. When I started on the Technology Advisory Committee, we still had courts that had no email, courts that had no computers. It took us a substantial period of time just to bring courts up to a base level of technology so that people did have equal access to justice in the various counties. The CCMS system is simply one component of that infrastructure. Again, having served on the committee when we were dealing with trying to certify case management systems across the state, I think I've got a pretty good idea of what our case management systems currently can do, what they cannot do, and more importantly, what they need to do. What we have now, I think everyone has recognized, is inadequate. I think my county in Contra Costa was a pretty good example. Our juvenile system does not speak to our family law system. Our civil system does not speak to our criminal law system. The data exchanges we have with our justice partners, I think, are reasonably good, but the systems are simply inadequate. We have spent a great deal of time building the infrastructure we need to be able to operate as a judicial branch. CCMS is one of the vehicles that we are using for that infrastructure. It would seem to me it would be a shame after all this time and investment to take that vehicle and park it in the garage and not use it.
Thank you. Judge Vicenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm shooting for 1 minute. I am a judge in the Los Angeles court and the president of the California Judges Association. The California Judges Association was founded just 2 years after the Judicial Council. It is a private organization funded solely by the dues of its 2,600 members. Over the 80 years of its existence, we have worked with the Judicial Council. We have sometimes challenged them, and on occasion we have openly fought with them. Last month, when I was sworn in as president of this great organization, I called for transparency throughout our branch. To that end, CJA has been actively engaged with the Judicial Council on the formation of this rule that you've heard so much about, this public records rule. We believe that this rule is critical to this transparency, but it will only work if, after the rule is established, we see that the AOC, the judicial branch, and all aspects of the branch follow through and make good on what the intent of that rule is. So our organization, the challenge for our organization, we would hope that this committee will as well follow through and make sure that the tenets of this rule, the ideas of making sure that everyone has access to all of the budget and administrative records of our branch, so that the branch truly is transparent. That's what our plan is. Thank you.
Thank you. As I call forward the next panel, Ira Kaufman, Mike Belote, Rosa Junquero, Linda Mascaro, and Harold Kahn. I want to be clear on the proposed rulemaking on the Public Records Act. It was initially something we were going to look at, but decided to wait until we saw what the final product was, rather than have a discussion here on something that was in the works. This time we'll just start to my right and then just come around so I don't have to butcher people's names more than once.
Mr. Chair and members, Mike Belote for the California Defense Council. Our civil defense lawyers, and this will be 1 minute, make a living in the courtrooms. If the courtrooms are closed, that is a tremendous practice problem and a problem with defending clients. No one dislikes court closures more than the civil defense bar. And I would also say this: cuts to the courts, the past cuts, the present cuts, the future cuts, fall disproportionately on the civil system. You got to prosecute the criminal defendants. You got to handle the marital dissolutions. The civil system takes the brunt of the cuts. So we are vitally interested in economies and efficiencies, the various things that you're talking about today. They're not all computer system driven. And the civil bar has been working with the AOC and the Judicial Council to find efficiencies and economies to make sure that we are processing civil cases as expeditiously as we can, knowing that the cuts will fall disproportionately on civil. We are evaluating and finding ways to do these cases more efficiently, and much of that has nothing to do with CCMS or computers. So we appreciate that collaborative process we're in, and it's going on even as we speak. As to CCMS, there is a civil component to that. I was shocked 15, 20 years ago about how primitive the information was available to the court system. Case trends. If you asked how many motions for summary judgment had been filed, what would be generated if we increased the fee on a motion for summary judgment? That information was simply not available. It's critical to the efficient and streamlined processing of civil cases. So we don't know what the right number is for life support. But I would say this: we appreciate the consultation and collaboration with the AOC and the Judicial Council to make sure that the civil system keeps going. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ira Kaufman. I'm the presiding judge of Plumas County. That's a small rural county in northeastern California. It's a two-judge court. 15 years ago, they had a case management system that was developed by the county. It has not been upgraded in 15 years. It was failing. The sheriff's office left the system because it could not work. We went to AOC. We asked to change it. We investigated it. We found out putting money into the system, taking it over, and making it work would be a disaster. If you throw good money after bad. We went to the Sustain project. Let me give you some numbers. Two-judge court, 15 employees, basically. It cost that we were given $1.2 million as the estimate to go to Sustain, two-judge court. My staff worked fantastically. We brought the project in for about $850,000. Had about a $300,000 savings. The staff really broke their backs to get it done, and they did a magnificent job. Okay, the system works. But if you take that money and you send it throughout the whole state and you try to go to Sustain and all that, it becomes an astronomical figure. Also, you have to assume that now we are paying a license fee to Sustain. And that license fee is about $750 to $1,000 per station. That is money we're spending that really could be stayed within the state and paid to the state, or not paid at all. It could be a very major cost savings. So now we have a system that will get us from here to there. But the sustained system, although does a great job, is not what we need. And we need to move to the case management system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Delatorre and members of the committee. My name is Rosa Junquero, and I am the court executive officer for the Superior Court in San Joaquin County. I've been in this position for about 5 years now, but I've been with the court for 25 years. It's no secret that Superior Court of San Joaquin County, like San Bernardino County, is one of the most under-resourced, historically underfunded courts in this state. As an underfunded court, under-resourced court, we depend heavily on the administrative office of the courts to provide administrative support to the court. We don't have the kinds of positions that other courts that are fairly well funded have. We don't have judicial secretaries enough to support the judges. We have 4 judicial secretaries to support 33 judicial officers and myself. We don't have anybody that I don't have anybody taking my calls, checking my voicemails. In my position in a I guess we're a large, medium-sized court, that's unheard of. The AOC has provided budget support, financial support. The Phoenix system has been phenomenal in helping the courts with procurements, budget revenues and expenditures, all of the financial pieces and parts that are needed to run a business, because that's what we are. Treasury support, grant administration, procurement, the trial court financial and policies and procedures. Very important document in helping guide the trial courts in the state of California. Office of Court Construction and Management, we're fortunate to get a new courthouse. Expertise in environmental impact report, project management, real estate, facilities maintenance, risk management, not to mention the facility transfer negotiations that took place early on. Oh, legal. We had legal opinions that are available to us. PIO assistance, public information officer. We've had several high-profile cases in our court, and with no ability to have that kind of support staff they've lent us the assistance to manage media.
My name's Harold Kahn. I'm a judge in San Francisco, and for the last several years I have been chair of the Advisory Committee on Collaborative Justice Courts to the Judicial Council. In 1992, we started our first collaborative court in California. Collaborative court is sometimes known as a problem-solving court. You've heard of them, drug courts, mental health courts, DOI courts. We had one in 1992. We have over 500 today. The largest reason for that is the AOC. Their work has been exemplary. California is the leading state in collaborative justice. It is because of the technical assistance, the groundbreaking evaluation work by the AOC, the identification of funding sources, the providing of help all across the board, that there are so many collaborative courts which save us a tremendous amount of money and are ethically responsible courts, because we focus on the problems of real people rather than just cycling them through the dependency court system or through the juvenile system or the adult criminal system. For us to be as effective as we can be, we need a system like CCMS. We are a very data-intensive system. We are the wave of the criminal justice and juvenile justice future. We cannot operate anywhere near as well as we potentially can be without a system like CCMS, and that is because we want we take into account a whole range of data, not just criminal records, but all kinds of personal service needs and a whole range of the circumstances of individuals. Very, very few of the computer systems of current courts can take that into account. And just one other thing I want to tell you about CCMS. Beginning in January, I have a new assignment where I'm taking on over 2,000 asbestos cases, many of which have 50 or 60 or 70 defendants each. Case managing like that is impossible without CCMS.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Mascaro. I have worked for LA County Superior Court for 19 years. I have pretty much done everything that can be done in the court system as a legal process unit. I have worked with the public windows in juvenile, family law, civil, and probate. I've worked with the elder abuse clinic that we work with. I know how much people need the courts, especially in economical times. I'm here today to speak for the people who depend on the courts for their help and their guidance. In this economy, when the court services of every type is rising, it is critical to do everything we can to protect the service of the public needs. Let me give you an example. I work the family law and civil windows. In economic crisis, elder abuse cases have been arising. A lot of unscrupulous people take advantage of our elders, either by stealing from them or not giving them the proper care that they need, either by physically or mentally abusing them. Often the courts, we get contacts from family members seeking help from the elders or other relatives in juvenile matters. I've referred people to several social services outreach programs, children and family law services. I recently got a call from somebody who came to the courts on the day that we were closed. All I could say was, I was sorry, but I'm here to help now. These days we see a lot of people are losing their homes, their jobs. People are coming to the courts distraught because of foreclosures are being filed, and we're limited what we can do. But as an experienced professional, I can help them by calming them down, refer them to legal assistance, and when the courts are closed and the services are being slashed, the real people, the public, are being hurt. We need to have real public debates about AOC's priorities. When I read about the AOC spending $2 million on a new computer system, I was shocked. How do they justify this? Are they supposed to be serving justice? So how do they justify it to the public? I'm so glad you asked these questions. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next panel is Karen Norwood, Susan Dorsey, Helen Arizumi, Ed Howard, and Sharon Strickland. Again, we'll start here and work our way across.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Ed Howard with the Children's Advocacy Institute. I want to thank you very much for holding this hearing, Mr. Chairman. Assemblymember Strickland, I think, hit the nail on the head when she talked about priorities. Making decisions in tough economic times is all about priorities, and priorities are about our values. Keeping the courts open is one value, but a stark example of another value at stake is exemplified by the following words, quote, dependency court attorneys who represent children and parents in court have an average caseload of 273 clients, which far exceeds the recommended caseload of 188 recently adopted by the Judicial Council. Those are not our words, but the important and brilliantly expressed words of Justice Carlos Moreno, as they were written in the Blue Ribbon Commission report that he justifiably mentioned and boasted of earlier. And he testified that, in fact, the funding for these children should be a priority. So let's talk about priorities. By contract, the Administrative Office of the Courts controls the caseloads of many dependency lawyers throughout the state. And in many instances, the AOC, by contract, imposes caseloads on dependency lawyers far in excess of the maximums imposed by the Judicial Council itself, far above what even the Judicial Council says these lawyers can actually handle. Everyone knows how badly these caseloads hurt kids. Everyone knows how badly this distorts the whole process. Yet the honest but passionate disagreement that we have with the AOC, and many other child advocates do as well, is simply this. It isn't a priority if everything else gets funded first, and you have to wait for an indefinite and unknown period of time for unknown and uncontemplated new monies to address the immediate needs of the most vulnerable children in California's courts.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Norwood, and I am representing ASME of the Los Angeles Superior Court. And my question is the case management system needed? Yes, in the future. But the courts have limited funds now and are experiencing court closures and denying public access. The number one priority of the AOC and the courts should be keeping the courts open. The court case management system is running in San Diego, Ventura, and Orange County, but in Los Angeles, only one small module is running in small claims, and there are issues with that particular module. The Alhambra Court only has approximately 8 small claim filings per day. This does not even compare to the 383 filings per day court-wide. What is essential? Considering that there has been no audit or transparency as to the actual costs associated with the funding of the CCMS project, the justification for allocated funding as recommended by the AOC has not been clearly defined. The AOC needs to provide full disclosure in detail about the court case management system as simply stated in the Judicial Council report dated October the 20th, 2009. What is the AOC staffing for this project? Is this going to incur more costs and staffing? Comprehensive audits of the AOC's financial, operational, and compliance need to be conducted of the AOC's administration, cash controls, revenues, expenditures, and general operation. The AOC must be held accountable for every expenditure before the expenditures are scheduled to occur. What is meant by adopted courts? Is the AOC asking 55 trial courts to foot a deployment bill for 3 courts, Ventura, San Diego, and potentially a 3rd court at the cost of $62 million plus for the year 2000, the fiscal year 2009 and 10?
Thank you very much. Time's elapsed. Please.
I am Helen Arizumi, and I have worked for Los Angeles Superior Court for 19 years. I have served in the criminal, traffic, civil, and small claims departments. I want to talk to you today about the case management system that is supposed to make our courts better for the public. That is example A in overspending by the AOC. When you work at the front windows in our busiest courthouses, you focus in helping people get their business done quickly and get back to work. I have seen computer systems come and go, but I judge them the same way. Will it make it easier for the public to use the courts and for me to do my job? As someone who has been trained in the new system, I have some real concerns about whether it can do this and how much it will cost. Court employees support making it easier for people and businesses to use the courts to process tickets and for courts to share information. We have introduced new tools through our website and automated phone lines to help people process their tickets and get information about their cases. But is this $2 billion IT system the right way to go? Unlike the current system, the massive new program does not allow electronic filing. For people who don't live near a court or our court or who work and can't come into our courts during business hours, they're taking away a great service. And a cumbersome data entry process with multiple screens and mouse clicks has added to the public's wait time. Yes, this is a more professional looking platform than our current one, and it takes less time to enter a case in the system when litigants are already in the database. But for the everyday Joe, average Joe, it's not an improvement. People come here at lunch time or on their breaks, and they shouldn't have to go to work 20 minutes late because of a computer system. The public is supposed to see a expensive
Thank you.
benefit from the expensive upgrade.
Thank you
So
very
far
much.
have it.
I'm Robin Allen. I'm replacing Susan Dorsey. I'm the executive director of the California CASA Association, and there were a number of volunteers and local leaders, all of whom had to leave today. CASA is a program that's funded by the Center for Family, Children, and of the Courts, a division of the Administrative Office of the Courts. And we have 43 counties with a CASA presence. We represent children in dependency proceedings who've been abused or neglected as community volunteers with just a common sense perspective and with the same kind of focus that any of you would give to a child that you loved. So we have the luxury of being able to advocate on behalf of one child at a time. The Administrative Office of the Courts investment allows for funding, very modest funding, for each of the programs, which then in turn allows the programs to fundraise from their local community to sustain the services to the court. Another part of CASA's role, I think, is important in terms of thinking about transparency, is that the dependency court proceedings, because we're dealing with vulnerable, abused, and neglected children, are closed to the public. And CASA volunteers are your constituents who are specially trained and supervised, and they are both ambassadors from the community to the court and from the court to the community, ensuring that the community's tax dollars are being used for the true intent, which is to protect our most vulnerable children in California, those who've been abused and neglected. The AOC CFCC allows us to evaluate all of the programs and ensure that all of the programs are operating at the highest level of service. And without that consistent leadership and investment, CASA programs wouldn't be able to provide this high-quality service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Strickland, and I'm the Court Executive Officer in Butte County for the Superior Court there. Over the last 29 years, I've had the honor of working in 3 different trial courts in Northern California, both small, which my current court is quite small and rural, to a very large court, Contra Costa County. During my tenure in those 3 courts, I deployed 3 individual case management systems, and I would like to express, if it is not too obvious, that deploying a court case management system is not a job for someone who is faint of heart. Having said that, there's a lot of similarities between how we operate. There's practices that we put in place based upon statutes that you make as law, also rules that come down from the Judicial Council. Currently, those practices, policies, rules, laws are implemented in each individual case management system, which is great expense. I don't believe that was touched on today. I know you've received a lot of materials on CCMS, and I know you have a good deal of background, so I will not go over that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the local implementation. We talk about justice at the state level, but the reality of it is justice is what each individual person experiences at the court. Having a unified case management system which gives a presence and a functionality to all members of our community, regardless of whether or not they live in a rich county or a poor county, is incredibly important. It's a basic fundamental right that I think we have a responsibility to provide. Local courts, if you could think of us as beads with holes through the middle of us, and all of the justice agencies throughout the state as links on a chain. We're the bead that all of that information has to flow through. So when you talk about implementation and the cost and the expense of it, think of what we're going to learn with those first few implementations. Think about what we can do in the subsequent implementations and how we can save time and energy. Back in February of 2008, I made a request of Sheila Calabro to engage small courts. We formed a small court consortium, and we are now engaged in assisting them with the final development of the product. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. The next panel is Alan Kidder, Cindy Baldwin, Ron Cottingham, Robin Allen, and Michelle Castro. All right. We'll start
Good
here.
morning, and I would like to thank the committee for hearing us, and I would advise the committee that I will be brief, and as such, I'm going to yield part of my time to Nick Warner from CSSA because we both have a time commitment. Okay, today we're discussing a system. We're not here to either oppose or support, but we're asking for consideration of why now with all the other budget problems that we have in California and the systems that we are closing the courts now. The judges today, the justices testified, and they talked about the Lockyer-Eisenberg bill that brought in supposed to establish stable, appropriate court funding and cost containment. What we have seen since then is a quadrupling of the court budget, and court staff is that cost containment. We are in favor, PORAC is in favor of the transparency that is being offered and the oversight that has been offered today, and I think there was one other justice that also testified to that. We think this is needed because there may be a need for a reprioritization of some of the funding. We went through a point of where earlier in the year there was $1.2 billion in IT, and now there's $1.75 billion in IT, and nobody's explained where that money came from. At the same time, they're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars for new court construction that is already going on. We're not opposed to that, but again, is there a need for reprioritization? At the same time, we're looking at cutting court security, and we're closing courts, and that's not the way the state was designed to be run. The sheriff's departments, the deputy sheriffs would like to be, are responsible, and would like to continue that responsibility for providing good, efficient, safe, secure courts for our judges, our public, our attorneys that have to go there. And this is something that is sorely needed. And what you need to ask yourself is, in view of everything that is occurring, is the current process created by Lockyer Eisenberg for trial court funding
Thank you.
appropriate and efficient?
Thank you very much. And Ron, thank you for your presentation, but you don't have time to yield.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Castor with the Service Employees International Union. SEIU represents trial court employees in 32 counties, and we think there were some great questions posed today, and we look forward to working with you throughout the year to deal with these matters. I can't speak to the viability or functionality of CCMS or whether it's good or not, because plenty of others who actually use the system have spoken about it and will continue to speak about it throughout the year. Our focus has been on the priorities for scarce state dollars. We believe the priority should be first and foremost in keeping the trial courts open and providing services to the public, especially in these dark fiscal times. Every misspent dollar, ill-spent dollar, or unaccountable dollar is a dollar that could be used otherwise to keep courts open or for other state budget priorities like education and health services and other important areas. Transparency is critical and a cornerstone of our democratic government. And what we have found in this branch of government, the transparency and accountability has not been there. We appreciate the actions the legislature took this past year to enhance accountability, especially with respect to budgets. We appreciate the directive on a new rule of court, and we've been working with the Judicial Council on that. However, our attorneys, when I was sitting here, just sent us a memo on the latest draft. It still falls short. We believe that the basis of that rule of court should be the Public Records Act and not just selecting portions here or there. But we will continue working with them, and we appreciate those discussions so far. We know this is the beginning of discussions, and we look forward to working with you throughout the year. However, we encourage you to adopt recommendations and implement subsequent legislation to reinstate state budget line items, increase reporting at all levels, prioritizing keeping courts opening, revisiting CCMS funding, and 1407 construction reserve dollars, and whether those can be temporarily redirected to keep courts open. We are not interested in impeding construction, but we believe that there are reserve dollars there that may be useful to court operations. Again, the open records and the rule of court, we'd like to see that adopted, and we hope it is broad and mirrors the Public Records Act. Independent audits by an independent agency of both the AOC and the trial courts is critical, by the Bureau of State Audits or the Comptroller's Office. And we believe increased state oversight of the IT project is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and panel members, thank you for having me here today. I'm Alan Kidder from the Los Angeles Superior Court. I'm a courtroom clerk and a member of AFSCME Local 575. The touchstone of the judiciary is transparency, accountability, and access to the courts. Unlike every other public agency in California, the AOC is not required to make its records, including its budgets, available to the public. There are no independent audits of the AOC's books. The AOC, free of any budgetary review, will spend $1.75 billion on CCMS. The AOC plans to fund CCMS partially with $72 million from the TCTF. The TCTF is the Trial Court Trust Fund, which the AOC draws upon to fund our daily trial court operations. The AOC at $72 million it could have sent back to county superior courts like mine in LA to help with our budget deficits, which are very severe. The AOC, which controls the $3.66 billion budget for California's county trial courts, has operated outside of public oversight with predictable results. Consider these two facts. One, just last month, the Daily Journal found that a new computer system for the courts expected to cost $1.75 billion. That's 35% more than AOC administrators reported to you, the legislature, just last year. The system is still years from completion. That's equivalent to $1 million computer system per judge in the state of California. Two, while county courts have been forced to lay off employees, the AOC continues to hire high-priced employees. In fact, the AOC has grown over 70% since 2004 and continues to hire despite a hiring freeze. The AOC must focus its priorities and the taxpayers' money on transparent, accountable, open courts. Here are some conditions that the legislature could set to make sure that Californians are seeing the full picture on our judiciary. 1, insist that keeping California's courtrooms open and maintaining public service is the first priority of the courts. 2,
Thank you. You can submit the rest in writing. The next panel is Lynn Yard, Janice Barat, Ariana Casanova, Debbie Pearson, Lacey Topolevsky. And then the panel after this, which I'll call, is John Passalarellis, Roger Chan, Gabrielle Tetreault, Jim Frayne, and Kim Dunning. Go ahead and please go ahead and get started while they're walking up.
Hi, my name is Ariana Casanova. I'm the political organizer for SEIU 10-1, which represents Northern California. My region, specifically Contra Costa and Alameda County. I'll be speaking a lot on behalf of Alameda County. I'm actually speaking on behalf of a lot of our court members, clerks, and reporters that were not able to be released on time today for the short staffing. If you do not know, which was not disclosed earlier by the justices or the AOC, we had 73 layoffs in June, which is a pretty significant shortage of staff, which caused them not to be able to address some of the issues that we had emails and several meetings over the last week or two to kind of put together some stuff. So I'll be covering budgets, staffing, and IT stuff. I'll begin with, we had the CCMS system in, to be specific, the V2 in traffic and in criminal. There was no, we don't know what the cost was. There was no benefit because it was thrown out. We had staff in what we have 10 or so courts. We had 8 clerks that from May of 05 till November of 05 had to work overtime 3 hours and 35 minutes each week, and were then told in November of 05 that this was not a viable option because they couldn't interface other systems into the CCMS system. And so I actually have the description of problem issues that were with the V2 system in both the traffic and the criminal courts. I also have other documentation that we will provide to you guys at a later date. Now, the other thing that's been an issue is staffing at the Alameda courts. It's mirroring the AOC. It's becoming top-heavy. Some of the concerns are that it's duplicating services and staffing. We have also a budget issue of there's, the Director of Finance mentioned there's $13 million in reserves and $8 million are to be used for a new facility in Dublin. And yet, we don't even have staff to staff the current courts, and we'll, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Go ahead. My name is Deborah Pearson, and I work in the Alameda courts. And I want to give you a little brief on what the public effects are. We used to be pretty efficient. We are becoming now less efficient due to lack of employees. Case files, which are, we are on a system that we just implemented a Citrix system. Actually, we don't know if it's part of CCMS or not. They had to back it out because when they put it in for the civil, it took down the whole system and they had to back it out. So, and we all had to shut down our systems that day, including juvenile, which is supposed to be separate. We have long lines in traffic. In those lines, since the shortage, and I'd like to invite you all down on a Thursday, the 3rd Thursday of the month, to see how our courts run. We've had fights in line. We've had people that have fainted in line. This is the public. This is who we're supposed to be serving. So the effects do reach them. Also, a little bit about the facilities. I've been on the bargaining teams for several years. Before this big, horrible thing about the budget, in 2006, we reopened, and we had a lot of workman's comp issues because I'll tell you, in some of the courts, the furniture still looks like from the 1950s and 60s. We were told that we had money for workman's comp issues and furnitures to help that. We have yet to see it. And these are things that, along with all the other cuts, we're seeing more workman comp issues going on, which means we have less people already than the attrition that we no longer have, and the people that have been laid off, 73 of them, all which were at the frontline people. That means that work
Thank
with
you.
the public.
Thank you very much.
My name is Janice Burkhutt. I work with the Sonoma Superior Court. I am a member of SEIU and the chief steward for that court, but I am a court services supervisor as well and have been there for 10 years.
Oh, I'm just going to sit here then. Okay.
I'm losing time. Can I get that back?
I'll move.
Can we be respectful?
I'll move when you're ready to go.
Okay,
Do I
well,
get my time back?
Yes, yes, we'll clear that. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm here to ask you today to please hold the AOC accountable. I've heard a lot how they're saying that they're going to be transparent with their budget. They're going to be transparent with everything. Well, I've been a negotiator on the contract team now for the past 3 contracts at Sonoma Court. They have not been transparent. We have had to file unfair labor practice with the PERB in order to get documentation from them. We get it late. We can't do collective bargaining when we can't get the information. So I haven't seen it, and I'm sorry, but with my history, I don't believe it. Their spending is out of control. The AOC has continued to add more people to their level. Our court has continued to add more managers, very similar to Alameda and many other courts, but no more line staff. As a matter of fact, the line staff has a hiring freeze, but they're hiring a new secretary for the new CEO as we speak. We tried to field V2 in my court. It failed. It was nothing but a money pit. They poured money into it, and they finally cut the cord, but we had a consultant still walking around for a year after that on our court's dime. When we tried to get that information out of our CEO, she hid behind the fact that she was exempt from the Public Disclosure Act. There was some questions here about whistleblowers and their protections. In the last contract negotiations, they fired a steward. She has since been reinstated through a grievance procedure with back pay. During that negotiations, they suspended me. I was reinstated with back pay. But it was a means of getting us out of the way. There were no repercussions. We filed with the AOC. They investigated, found nothing wrong. Please don't let them police themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Pastorellis, Roger Chan, Gabrielle Tetro, Jim Franey. I went to Catholic school, so I'm very clear in the way I write, but some of you clearly didn't. Kim Dunning.
Good morning, good afternoon. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jim Frayne. We're neutral. I'm going to represent today Sac County Deputy Sheriff's Association, Orange County Deputy Sheriffs, Anaheim Police Association, the State Coalition of Probation Organizations. However, I don't have to expound to this committee about the critical fiscal crisis we have. For example, in Sacramento County, we lost 122 deputies that were laid off, over 170 probation officers. That resonates across the state, not only in public employees, but also in business. Without public safety, the other functions of government fail. One of the things we're concerned about is in good intentions of cost cutting in the courts to implement some of the programs they've talked about is lessening the funding and also the personnel for court security. In economic times, criminals don't take vacations. Prison reform, you passed in this House, releasing 17,000 prisoners. The governor's plan is 27,000. The federal courts are ready to release over 40,000 with a mandate. Now is not the time to lessen security anywhere, and especially in the courts. If the courts aren't safe, no one's safe. In Stockton, they had a recent incident. If an officer wasn't present and armed and trained, the judge and several of the people might have been killed or injured. We urge your consideration about the additional load to public safety for these matters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Kim Dunning. I'm the presiding judge of the Orange County Superior Court. Of the 9 million cases that are initiated in California courts each year, 750,000 of them are filed in Orange County. Before we moved to CCMS V3 for our civil, probate, and mental health calendars, we had no fewer than a dozen legacy systems. We couldn't budget for them because they failed unexpectedly. We couldn't keep enough staff trained on them. Our tech people couldn't deal with them. If a paper file, a person would wait in line, come to the counter. If the paper file was not on the shelf and the checkout card had slipped behind, we couldn't tell the person when they could come back and see the file. When they saw a file, we had to have staff personnel there to watch them, monitor them so that they did not take paper out of the file. Today we have CCMS. We do not maintain paper files in those case types. That's from small claims to complex. 11 people, their full-time job up until last July was to keep these paper files in order and correct. Those people have now been redeployed. Today, a judge, a research attorney, a clerk, a member of the public can come. We can all be looking at the same case file at the same time because it's available on the kiosk. We don't need to have court staff at the counter who are very busy monitoring people looking at files. We don't have to get a file for them. In Orange County, a judge in Newport Beach knows if a person has a domestic violence restraining order from North County. We know this in Orange County now. We didn't know this a couple years ago. But judges in Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, our neighboring counties, they don't know this because we don't have the mechanism to share this information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next group is Alan Carlson, Tom Girardi, Joe Dunn, former Senator Joe Dunn, Judge Erica Yu, and Joanne Allen. And while they're coming up, I'm going to make an editorial comment that for a very conservative county, they sure are litigious in Orange County.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Alan Carlson. I'm the executive officer in Orange County Superior Court. I want to make 2 points here. One is it works. As Judge Dunning indicated, we've been using V3 since 2007. We currently have it operating in 56 courtrooms. We have over 340 staff trained to do it. We have almost 900 hearings a day are using V3, and we have over 3,600 documents a day that are processed through the system. It works every day. We use it every day. We wouldn't go back. We wouldn't want to go to do anything else. The use of V3 and linking it to our document management system has allowed us to save people. It's one of the reasons we have not laid people off in the last year, is because we've been able to reallocate people because of the advantages from the system. Second point I want to make, for the 8 years before I got to Orange County, and I've only been there a year, I worked nationally and internationally as a management consultant in courts. I've worked in most of the states in the country. You will have a very hard time finding any state anywhere that's doing what we're doing. Texas wouldn't even think about doing this. Florida went to state funding a few years ago. They dreamed to have a system like our system. We are way ahead of folks. When you're the first one that does it, it costs more, it takes longer, it hurts, it's a hassle. But we're way out ahead of people. The interesting point made earlier, let's get the vendors to bid on this thing and give all them the risk. My guess is nobody will bid on it. The risk is way too high. Or they'll bid on it and they'll give us a price tag that will be astonishing compared to what we're spending now. It costs money to do something the first time. That's what we're doing. It works. We've demonstrated with V3. We're using Vision, which is version 1.5 or something like that on the criminal and traffic side. All that's being carried forward into V4. This will be very good.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Are you getting tired? This is a long day for you. My name is Tom Girardi. I just want to say a couple things. The Judicial Council, you know, it's the real deal, Holofield. I spent 3 years there. I just got off a few months ago. And this is 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, worried about the most, a billion problems. You need more Korean interpreters in such and such a location. You have a 5-year situation to get a case to trial, a civil case to trial in a certain county. One lawyer represented a widow and 3 little children was told by the other lawyer, the insurance company doesn't want to really deal with this right now because they know it's 4 years before you can get there. The Judicial Council, man, they're all over these things. It's a tough job, a lot of problems. We have to get one system. One county even has a sign in the clerk's office, we don't care how you do it in Los Angeles. The idea being reject after reject of files. So for all lawyers on both sides, we have to have one system. Finally, we're in desperate need of this system. There were 5,600 Vioxx cases filed in California, all over, in all the counties. Do you know the thousands of hours of clerk time that took just to put them under one roof, let alone try to communicate with 600 lawyers for the past 5 years? It was mentioned there are 2,000 asbestos cases. There are 2,900 cases of another drug, which are all over the place. 1,000 Byetta cases, more than 1,000 Yaz cases. These are just some of the civil cases that are out there. We're in desperate need of that. Other courts use this system. I have cases across the country. You'll get something from the court that says the court is postponing your matter 2 days. It would take a clerk 10 seconds to notify all 500 lawyers. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case any of our legislative colleagues wonder, as a former member, you get priority status. My presence on the list this far down ought to answer that question. I would ask the Chair if he would just give me an extra minute or two, because I want to offer comments from a very different perspective than what you've heard already today. And thank you for having this hearing. And it's great to see Mr. Martin and Mr. Spahn in their new positions as well, too. We worked on many issues together over the years. But it is an honor for me to be here. Most of the members and staff know I served as Senate Judiciary Chair, and at the same time I served as the Chair of Senate Budget Sub 4, which is where the court's budget went through on the Senate side of the building. I don't know whether that was good news or bad news to folks that I controlled all aspects of that. But those dual capacities, Mr. Chair, gave me the opportunity to engage in the oversight that you are now conducting through this particular committee as well. And in that capacity, as it's very well known, I was a staunch advocate for the branch, the judicial branch, for the Judicial Council, for the AOC. I was also, and still am, a staunch advocate for labor. I suspect my voting record for SEIU and ASME is 100%, and proud of that. I was also a staunch advocate for the sheriffs and the deputy sheriffs throughout those years, and probably also have a 100% voting record with them. And perhaps more than anything else, as those, including the chair, knew when I was here, I was probably the most ferocious advocate on behalf of judges, individual judges. Both as to their pay and as to their independence, and engaged in some bitter fights, actually, unbeknownst to all of us that they would end up that way on behalf of individual judges. I share that, Mr. Chair, for everyone here because in my dual role in the Senate and with my advocacy on behalf of many of the voices within the judicial branch, we faced many of these questions that this committee is now looking at now. Whether that was the growth of the AOC or whether it was questions about CCMS. Mr. Vickery and the Chief and the council members know we had some very difficult meetings about the growth of the AOC while we examined whether in fact that growth was justified. We examined many aspects in the early stages of CCMS to determine whether the right path was being followed. Although I know none of the committee members were here, I know, Mr. Chair, you remember the first big blow-up in 2000 and oversight hearings done in this House, not in our House in the Senate, over a computer system that was an absolute disaster, and that was front page news. So we lived through that. And as the CCMS grew, it was right on the heels of that. And so we had many hearings. Well, can I define 10 seconds a little differently? I'll get to the point quickly. And so many of these questions were explored and answered. Why do I share that history, Mr. Chair? I share that because we were able to examine those oftentimes criticisms, complaints, concerns, questions by all the voices, flowing multiple ways of the various individuals that I mentioned. We were able to resolve them in a collaborative process. Oh, sometimes those meetings were brutal, ugly, tough, but we got through them. with recognizing that everybody's priorities are legitimate and at times they clashed, whether it be the interests of labor versus the court or the courts versus the sheriffs or the sheriffs versus whatever way they cut. They clashed. That's the nature of the beast of being in the legislature, as we know. But we made it happen on a collaborative basis with open lines of communication. The questions raised by this committee, the questions raised by all of the folks, both friend and foe of the courts, are legit. In their minds, they're legit, and we need to deal with them. My hope is that for whatever reason that lines of communication have perhaps broken down in the last couple of years, that the best approach to these issues is not demanding fundamental policy changes in a body that already is immersed in policy, our judicial branch, but rather to seek back to that pathway that I know, Mr. Chair, you watched it, you participated in at the time, in bringing those voices all legit together again in a collaborative process and work together, recognizing we are all one family in the judicial branch. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Judge, you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your fortitude. I was thinking maybe there'd be one of you left by the time I got here. Yeah, now there's two. So I've been a judge for 8 years. I'm on the Santa Clara County Superior Court, and I grew up in a bilingual home. English is not the first language of my parents. So language access is of particular interest to me, and I mean the human language, not different computer languages. There are over 200 languages spoken in our courts, and the AOC administers and oversees 1,638 interpreters. The AOC recruits, tests, and certifies and registers interpreters. The CCMS program would allow the AOC to better track and coordinate those interpreters, and I'm going to put a human face as to why that's so important. 4 years ago, I was able to help fix a case where a domestic violence victim living in a domestic violence shelter with her children was convicted of a domestic violence crime. She was a very slight Asian American woman who only spoke Cambodian. The perpetrator only spoke Spanish. The police didn't know what to do. They arrested the woman instead of the perpetrator, and she appeared in front of the court with not a very good interpreter. There are, for example, smatterings of interpreters in certain languages, and when we need a deaf relay interpreter in San Jose, we have to fly the person up from LA. So a court system where we can track and coordinate interpreters would be very useful. Delaying on the macro level, CCMS will have a real life impact on a micro level, because that woman with a domestic violence conviction would have difficulty finding employment. She cannot get child support, and she can't get child custody. Fortunately, we were able to fix it. The DA gave her a finding of factual innocence, but that's a real life example of why we need to be coordinated.
Thank you. And just want to acknowledge Senator Joe Dunn's members' privileges on getting the extended time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Steve,
Thanks for
thank you. Steve Binder, Judge Brad Heil, Judge Marianne Gilliard, Judge Ken So, and Michael Reddy, or Ratty.
Hello, I'm Steve Binder. I'm a Deputy Public Defender in San Diego County. I'm co-founder and coordinator of the Homeless Court Program, also a former chair for the ABA Commission on Homelessness and Poverty, now serving as a special advisor. The Homeless Court Program started in San Diego in 1989, and I'm here to speak access to justice and the collaborative efforts that the AOC promotes. It started as one court in San Diego. It is now 1/3 of the court system throughout the state. And that is largely with the benefit of the AOC helping other communities develop funding and point them in the right directions for grants, as well as facilitating the network throughout the state and training programs throughout the state, including a roundtable with the American Bar Association that helps promote collaborative justice. And the impact on the clients and the community of the AOC's efforts in the collaborative justice field is in building trust and confidence in the courts, for the criminal justice system, for the courts itself, and for government as a whole. And working with providers, the courts and the AOC are helping to extend justice throughout the state using a small amount of court time to actually process hundreds of cases. I applaud the work, the dedication, and the professionalism of the court clerks, the judiciary, and the AOC. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Hill. I'm on the Court of Appeal in Fresno. Nice to be with you this afternoon. I'm currently on the Judicial Council, having started a term about 2 years ago. The Judicial Council and the AOC have been credited over the years with making great strides in making our courts accessible to those who found themselves without a voice and thus without access. Individual courts across our state who had been historically underfunded, and my home court of the Fresno Superior Court was one of those, were brought in at near parity due to the efforts of the Judicial Council and the AOC. The courts of the Central Valley and the Inland Empire, and you heard the presiding judge of the San Bernardino Court echo these words, and the millions of citizens in those previously ignored areas have them to thank, the AOC and Judicial Council, for the access to justice that they have made a reality. The AOC's work over this past decade has been exemplary, and I don't know what all of us as court leaders would have done without their expertise and their assistance over the years. Now, the court closure issue that has been addressed was certainly a difficult one for all of us on the council, and I assure you it was not taken lightly. During the last budget crisis, when I was the presiding judge of the Fresno Superior Court, I had to close several outlying courts to make ends meet. And as a branch, we in essence had to do the very same thing this year, closing for that one day a month. Every possible option was considered by the council before taking that step, but it was something that had to be done, albeit very reluctantly. We've also heard just briefly from some of those who say that perhaps we should defer some of our building programs. We owe it to the public not to put them at risk in these very dangerous courthouses that have seismic and security concerns by deferring once again these building projects. Our citizens should not be put in danger simply because it looks like an easy fix. Easy budget fixes rarely result in sound policy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ken So. I am the presiding judge in San Diego County, the third largest trial court in the country. And I'm also a member of the Judicial Council. I'd like to talk a little bit about case management. We have a case management system that runs our criminal and traffic system that is 30 years old, much like San Luis Obispo. We pay San Diego County $1 million every year to help run that system. Our programmers are retiring or they're dying. So ultimately, my responsibility is to make sure this operation runs. We have no choice but to go forward. It's not fiscally prudent just to stand still. That's why it's critical that we continue this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my name is Mike Roddy. I'm the executive officer in San Diego. And I'm here to talk about the choices that I don't want to make. I don't want to close courthouses, and I don't want to stop CCMS. Both of these are important issues. We've been in a hiring freeze in San Diego since December of '07. Wasn't caused by CCMS. It was caused by a lack of funding. It's an unfortunate circumstance, and we are not providing the service to our community that we want to provide. But I also can't stop on the CCMS front. I need to provide my staff and the judges with the tools they need to do their job. If there is no computer system, and as the judge indicated, we're running 6 separate systems in our court alone, some of them over 30 years old, there will be no access. We had a virus in our court last year. We had to shut everything down. We were within a day of virtually closing the doors. Only because we were able to send our staff to other county departments and agencies in different buildings on separate systems were we able to keep the doors open. It was really illustrative to me of the fact that we've got to continue moving all of these things forward. We've got to fight our way through the budget crisis we face. We need to fight our way through CCMS. We have over 800,000 cases currently on that system. Like Ventura and Orange, we use it every day. We've filed over 250,000 cases since we went live in 2006. We've invested hundreds and hundreds of staff hours to improve the system, It's much different today than it was 3 years ago when we implemented that system. So we can't afford to stop that, and it unfortunately makes many of us at the local level face some very difficult choices because we don't want to close the doors, but we can't afford to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Superior Court Judge Mary Ann Gilliard. I'm a judge here in Sacramento County. I also represent the Alliance of California Judges, and I want to thank the very brave members of this committee that actually sought out judges and brought them to the Capitol in order to address you. Most people run away from judges. You actually invited them, and I appreciate that. You know, life is a series of choices. We can choose to continue to fund a multi-billion-dollar computer system, or we can keep courtroom doors open to the public. We can commence a statewide building spree and build new courthouses up and down the state, while at the same time we're closing the old ones to the public that we serve. Last Wednesday, I'm presiding in a murder trial, and I had to send my murder jury home because I was ordered to be shut that day, notwithstanding the fact that myself, my clerk, my court reporter, and my bailiff were all present. The only people that could not be present was the public and the attorneys and the defendant facing very serious charges, as well as the jurors that were sitting there taking time out of their schedule. It is both telling and sad that the court's bureaucracy spends more time defending a $2 billion computer system than they do advocating to keep the doors of the courtrooms open to the public. I think it is also unacceptable that they cannot tell you today, after 5 hours of sitting in this meeting room, what this computer system is going to cost, what it is going to do, and when it is going to be done. That is shameful, and that is unacceptable. We respectfully ask this committee to do a few things. Number one, transparency. I'm so happy to hear the AOC speak about transparency because we owe that to the public. Secondly, this committee needs to look very seriously into democratizing the Judicial Council on the most difficult vote this council ever made. And I believe Justice Hill when he says that. It was a difficult decision. The vote count was 21-0. When was the last time a 21-0 vote ever occurred in this building on a difficult issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you. No reaction, please, to any testimony in the room. Jim Fox, Greg Totten, Stephen Manley, Nancy Drabble, and Kenneth Krikorian. We'll start with you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for your perseverance. I'm Jim Fox, the District Attorney of San Mateo County, and I've served in that position for the last 27 years. When I started prosecuting cases in 1970, 40 years ago, we were still using carbon paper. We didn't even have NCR paper. Technology has evolved. 20 years ago in our county, we developed an integrated case management system that included the court, the sheriff, the district attorney's office. And it was on COBOL. It was on a mainframe. In August of this year, we finally migrated off. But we did so only in collaboration with the AOC because we know what the future is. And so our system is fully ready to become part of CCMS. And I think that while I understand the human toll and I understand the problems with court closures, I think that the public's access to the court is going to be dramatically improved with full implementation. You know, in our county we have an integrated system, but we do not have access to other counties. And in terms of trying to obtain prior convictions to make sure that criminal defendants are held accountable for their conduct and recognition of their prior crimes, if we have an automated system that is fully accessible by prosecutors, we will be able to obtain those documents by pushing a button. Right now, it takes weeks and sometimes months to get certified documents out of the Los Angeles Superior Court. So I urge you to continue to support CCMS.
Thank you. My name is Greg Totten. I'm the District Attorney of Ventura County, and as you have heard today, we are one of the pilot counties for the next version of CCMS. And I'm also here to urge you not to recommend derailing of this system. I'm mindful of this committee's responsibilities and oversight, so let me talk a little bit about stewardship, because as public officials, we're all concerned about stewardship and managing scarce resources. And in that regard, I think two key issues need to come into play before you today. One is trust, and the other one is need. Mr. Fox has spoke briefly to need. Let me just emphasize again on this prior issue, this issue of obtaining priors. We file over 30,000 cases in Ventura County annually. Fully 40% of those cases have need for prior conviction records. I have 2 clerks at any time that are working full-time on obtaining those priors. Cases are delayed, backlogs grow. We have a whole host of cost issues and case-related problems because we can't access prior conviction records. The number one county we seek those records out of is LA, a contiguous county. It takes us, in some cases, months. In some cases, I have to send investigators to that county to obtain those records. The promise of CCMS is, as Mr. Fox pointed out, we would be able to get those with a push of a finger on a computer. The second issue is trust. In Ventura County, we have a fully integrated justice system that includes the sheriff, the district attorney, the public defender, the courts, and other law enforcement agencies. I can now issue subpoenas electronically to other law enforcement agencies. I can find anything I need to know about a Ventura County case just by sitting down at a computer screen. The same person who led the charge to develop and deploy that system is now in charge of the AOC system. And the bottom line is, I trust her. I know this person. She and the rest of the AOC have been very responsive to every request we have had, and I just urge you to allow this system to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. This upcoming panel is our final panel. Anthony Williams, Ignacio Hernandez, Carolyn Dasher, and Willie Pelote. You can speak after they're done, Assembly Member.
Anthony Williams with the Wada Williams Law Group. I want to first say on behalf of the State Bar of California, the State Bar, and myself personally, believe that no one at the AOC is interested in anything but public protection and access to the justice system, and the State Bar supports those efforts. I do, though, want to also say that I'm here on behalf of the Communication Workers of America, California Federation of Interpreters, and I'm going to turn it over to Mary Lou Aranguren, who will discuss that.
Okay. A minute and a half.
Okay. I'm Mary Lou Aranguren with the California Federation of Interpreters, CWA. I want to talk with you about how the interpreter program has been seriously impacted by the transparency and accountability issues that are being discussed here today. As has been acknowledged in your analysis, approximately $28.8 million in funds appropriated for the interpreter services program by the legislature over the past 6 years approximately have not been utilized as intended by the legislature. The funds were diverted to AOC reserves, and you've been hearing about the difficulties that unions and others have had in getting just accurate and timely information about the AOC's budget. It took us several years and the assistance of legislative budget committees to document that there were funds appropriated for interpreter services that were not being applied to that use. Now, at the same time, we have very serious problems with the delivery of interpreter services in the state of California. This is a statewide program. It is administered by the AOC, and it is in a separate line item, but the problems are not being addressed using the funds appropriated by the legislature. We have continued use of untrained, unqualified interpreters in many parts of the state. We have stagnant wages, vacant positions, cutbacks of interpreter services that are affecting due process and impacting public and the public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Carolyn Dasher, and I'm the president of the California Court Reporters Association. I arrived late, and I was out in the hallway, but I do understand that the issue of electronic recording was brought up earlier. And I just wanted to say that the California Court Reporters Association are available anytime to speak to any member of the legislature and answer any questions that you have, and I will leave my card. Thank you.
If you have some, the questions were regarding pros and cons. So if you have some information from your perspective on that, we'll make sure that everybody on the committee gets it.
Great. Thank you. I'll provide that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice. We are a statewide association of criminal defense attorneys in private practice, and we also have members who are public defenders. I do appreciate the efforts of today's committee hearing to look at economic decisions that are being made by the AOC and how it impacts the administration of justice. I can tell you that the decision to close courts for 12 days a year has severely impacted those individuals who we represent. We now have a court system that is open only 11 months a year when you take into consideration the other holidays. And we're talking about individuals who are arrested and never have a chance to set foot in court because of these holidays and because of the court closures. We're talking about additional day in jail before someone can go in front of a judge and explain his or her innocence and get released. That is one of the impacts of the court closures. And our concern is that the decisions to spend money on CCMS and other economic decisions that are being made by the AOC are not taken into consideration the larger picture and the impact on the criminal justice system. We have to realize that we have a constitutional guarantee to provide indigent defense for criminal defendants, and that promise and that constitutional we're in a constitutional crisis because public defender offices are being slashed up and down the state. So at the same time that we're talking about $1 billion or $2 billion computer system to manage files, we have thousands upon thousands of individuals who are being accused of crimes who do not have access and are losing access to criminal defense attorneys because the counties are losing money as well. So the pressure of continuing the CCMS is putting additional pressure on the counties, and they're unable to provide public defenders. And that is a constitutional crisis. Let me just close by saying one last thing.
Thank you.
If I have 2 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The second largest revenue source to AOC is the criminal defense defendants.
Mr. Chairman and
Final
members.
person. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and members, my name is Wally Pelote, representing the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. I want to first thank you for holding this meeting and hope that there will be additional meetings held, or hearings held on this subject matter. And Mr. Chairman, what I wanted to say is first is associate our remarks with the judge from Sacramento. We think it was right on key. And then secondly, to say that we are not against the deployment of the version 4 or the version 3 or whatever it might be system, but we ask that it shouldn't be taken as a first priority over the priority of giving access to the judicial system by the people and the public. And at a time when we have been cutting and slashing every program in existence within the state of California that even impact kids and seniors, as well as the higher education system and the like, it doesn't make sense to us that we would fund this system over making sure that the court is open daily, the number of hours that are required to dispense justice. Our union have worked on the judicial budget for 15 years that I've been here, and one of the things that was always a priority to make sure the more unfunded courts were funded so they could be available to the public, and we always supported those measures. And now to come before you and discuss why a system is a high priority for funding than closing the courts or keeping the courts open for the public. We strongly believe that the legislature should do what is right and in the interest of the public that you were elected to do, is to hold the courts accountable and hold the system in abeyance until the financial crisis in the state of California has gotten beyond us. If you can do that, Mr. Chairman, you are doing what is in best interest of the public to justice, and we again associate our remarks with the judge from the great city of Sacramento.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for sticking around. This is by far the longest hearing we've ever had in this committee. It's almost double our normal, but I think there's a lot of interest, obviously, in the general public. I would want to ask my colleagues, I know Assemblymember Arambula had a comment he wanted to make. If anybody else would like to make closing comments, Assemblymember Arambula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that I think the Judicial Council and the AOC do perform very vital functions. And a couple of examples, the fairness with regard to court facilities and the allocation of additional judicial positions and then having them go to counties that have really struggled the most because of growing population. In addition, I think the effort to modernize and make more efficient the computer system is a good effort. But I believe that the recommendations that the chair has proposed will benefit everybody, including the legislature and the judicial branch, in terms of increasing in the sharing of information and increasing the openness. The chair alluded to the purpose of the hearing being to focus on the changes, on the process, and I think the recommendations will help open up that process and keep it open. So I simply wanted to add my comments to the effect that there are some vital functions being performed, but they can be done best in an atmosphere of greater openness. So I would be very supportive of those recommendations.
Thank you. Just before anybody else speaks, I'll read these out because I don't think the general public has heard them. First, require that the court's annual budget provide line items for each of the 11 divisions within the administrative office of the courts. Again, trying to parallel what is expected of executive branch agencies. Require administrative office of the courts to annually provide an operating and expense schedule. This is a set, defined sheet that each agency in the executive branch provides to the Department of Finance. We would want a parallel document that lists the same categories of expenditures. Require that the court's annual budget provide more detail regarding the trial court trust fund. On this one, we would ask that the AOC consult and coordinate with the budget committees and Department of Finance to agree on what the proper line items would be. We're not going to lay them out here. Require legislative notice for intra-schedule transfers. In the executive branch, agencies have to report transferring monies among different schedules in the same fund. They are required to report any transfer in excess of $200,000 or 10% of the amount appropriated in that item to the budget committees of each house of the legislature and the chairperson of the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. The requirement here would be that a similar notification take place when the courts undertake a transfer of monies. And then finally, require that the Judicial Council's next annual report regarding information technology projects provide total estimated costs of CCMS and a funding plan. It was abundantly clear today that we really don't know where we're at, and that's very important in terms of our ability to provide that oversight. So with that, any other comments? Yeah. Well, we don't have, because of the late hour, some people had to catch flights, and so we will not get to the quorum that we had previously. So we will carry over the recommendations for an actual vote to our next hearing, which is in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, I think the AOC knows what they are. It's just a matter of proceeding along that path, and will really be effective when Budget Sub 4 takes up its work in 3 or 4 months. So we really, over this period of time, need to get that information in order to make the budget process more efficient. If there are any other comments from members, Assemblymember Caballero.
Yes, I do want to make a comment, and I want to thank everybody that came here today. It was one of the longer hearings, and we probably should have scheduled it for a full-day hearing because we had to cut some people short and move pretty quickly. But I do want to say that I really appreciate the testimony. I appreciate the questions that were asked were excellent, and moving from a system and having worked in that system, I spent 25 years as an attorney working as a trial attorney working within the court system, I recognize that every county is different. They have their own way of doing things, their own time constraints, and trying to move to a more unified system where you're sharing information is truly an important issue, because up until fairly recently in our county probation department, everything was on paper. So if you had a police officer that needed to find out if somebody was on probation and the system was down, you had to go find the file. And that's the kind of system that does not work well. It does not protect the public. And then you start adding foster children and dependency cases and all that kind of stuff, and you recognize that you could have a system in collapse. So I want to underscore how important this is that we get a system up and running. But I also want to agree with the recommendations, the transparency issues that have been brought here today, because I think it's really important that in the days of limited funds, that we have a way to be able to evaluate how things are working. And part of what I was trying to get to and was lost, and so maybe some of the reports we can get as well, is what are some of the efficiencies that we've seen. I really appreciated the testimony of one of the officers, and I apologize because my notes went with me when I left. But there was information about a dependency system that has seen tremendous reduction in the necessity to remove children from their homes, and that is, when you can reduce those numbers, that's a lower cost that you're not going to find in your numbers that you're looking at. You're going to see them overall as the county is looking at them. We won't see them because they won't come to us. So as you prepare your numeral reports, I would really appreciate hearing about pilot programs that are working in different counties that are working very successfully at either reducing recidivism or reducing dependencies or keeping kids out of foster care, because I think we're all concerned about that as well, and that's the human face of all of this. So as we look at this, I think we're all committed to trying to keep the courts open every day. They should be open. Because that's what we owe the public. And so I do want to show my appreciation to everybody who came here today. And we may have missed some of your testimony, but we heard it somewhere else, and appreciate the opportunity to get this information. And we recognize that the judicial branch is the third branch of government, and they've got some tremendous independence from the legislature. But I just think that the opportunity to shine the light on some of the expenditures will make everybody feel a lot better about it.
Thank you. Any other comments from members? I had two thoughts over the course of the hearing. Number one, I really appreciate the judges and staff who came forward and talked about the good work of the courts in different areas, whether it be criminal or civil, children and families, etc. That is not at all what we were looking to do here today. We all appreciate that. I think most of us appreciate those programs and think they're very worthwhile. The question, again, is process, is what is taking place on a day-to-day basis in terms of the expenditure of funds, and letting us know what is going on in order that we can provide proper oversight. And then the second comment, I was struck by one of the public comments about how the CCMS system would allow the judicial branch, the judges, to exercise their full authority as judges in the administration of justice. In other words, by having the full range of information in front of them, they would know what to do with that person who's in front of them on that case. That's what we're asking for here in the legislature. We need the full array of information so that this legislature can make proper decisions on its constitutional obligation, which is to oversee and fund the other two branches of government. That's all we're asking for, and that was it. And I think you can see in the recommendations today that that's where we're going with this. Assemblymember Rambola and I will certainly be seeing this in a few months. If after that budget process things don't seem to be going on the right track, we may revisit these issues. So with that, thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll write back to you.
I'll take one of your cards.
Yeah, by all means. And I will write you notice also about the IHS program. I'll tell you, I don't know what you're doing in the IHS. You said a lot.
Well, I have to go recheck, but I have your card. We'll connect again.
Okay, I'll write it up.
Just give us some time. Thanks. Thanks for apologize, but I absolutely need to be at this one.